Pro Football Hall of Famer. Love this man's work with one of my favorite people, Joe Buck. Pro Football Hall of Famer Troy Aikman here on the Rich Eisen Show. How are you, Troy?
I'm good, Rich. How are you?
I'm doing fine. I will just go and throw the floor straight open to you. What did you think of Super Bowl 55 and what we saw last night, Troy?
Well, I thought going in, Rich, I expected it to be – I did not think it would be a shootout. I thought it would be a low-scoring game overall compared to when you look at these two teams and how explosive they could be. And I just thought that defensively what Todd Bowles was able to do – I actually just got through the film.
Great.
And watched what they were able to do. They mixed things up pretty good. They were not going to give up big plays. They were able to get to Mahomes with a four-man rush, and I think flustered them a little bit. I think that, they sometimes when you're used to getting big plays down the field and then when those don't happen, you tend to get a little bit frustrated as an offense, and they just never could quite get in sync. Where you look at their third downs and their inability to convert and maintain possession of the ball, not come away with touchdowns in the red zone, and then as many penalties as they had too. Many of those were obviously pretty costly in that game. So just an overall great performance by Tampa Bay and what they were able to do towards the end of the season and then throughout the postseason.
So, obviously a lot will be made, was made, is going to be made about the two stellar left tackles for the left and right tackles for the Chiefs being out. And I don't want to basically say, well, it would have been a totally different result had Fisher and Schwartz played, because that might, denigrate the remarkable talents that we saw in that front seven last night. How do you think that played out, having seen the film already, Troy?
It definitely it's a factor. I mean, anytime you've got when you're missing offensive linemen, and particularly edge blockers against the pass rush like Tampa Bay has, it affects things, and it did. But I thought early in that game, Rich, if you take away Patrick Mahomes, let's just say in the first half, Mahomes, he had some scrambles, did a nice job, but Tampa Bay played a lot of coverage, and they were wanting Kansas City to beat them running the football, and Edwards-Helaire, he had just 4 carries in that first half and came out in the second half, had a couple nice runs on the opening possession of the third quarter, and then after that possession failed to do anything. Then it became a passing game early in that third quarter because of the score. They were down 3 scores, but I thought that they could have maybe been a little more balanced, trying to run the football against some of those looks that Tampa Bay was showing. It would have helped out the offensive line. But at the end of the day, if you're not keeping the opponent from coming away with points the way that they were able to, then we see what happened. The game starts to get away from you, and then you have no choice, and then that makes things even harder.
Troy Aikman, Pro Football Hall of Famer, NFL on Fox analyst here on the Rich Eisen Show. Can you put into words what Tom Brady is doing right now?
No, I don't know that. I don't know that anybody can. I'm a huge fan of Tom's. I have been for a long, long time. I love the way he plays the game. I said it during the postseason when we had Tampa and New Orleans with Drew Brees and Brady, and I just think that there's a lot to learn watching those guys play the position. And for Tom, he just knows situations. I don't know. I think it's a lost art to some degree because we're in this kind of fantasy world to where it's all about numbers and throwing the football, and everybody points to statistics to determine how somebody's doing. But I think that Brady obviously has the numbers, but he just knows what's required in virtually every situation to give his team the best chance to win, and nobody's won at a higher level more than him, of course, and it's remarkable. I mean, it really is. And I think that what Bruce Arians said after the NFC Championship game, I thought was really telling. He said it just took one man. We needed one man to show us how to do it, and I think that's taken away from the staff and certainly Bruce Arians. But the point was well taken that Brady came in and immediately gave that team a belief, and I think franchise quarterbacks do that. Patrick Mahomes has done that for Kansas City. We can go through the list. Aaron Rodgers with Green Bay, Drew Brees with New Orleans. But, that's what Tampa Bay needed, and they obviously have done a really good job assembling that roster. I thought week one when we had them against the Saints to open up the season that those two teams in the NFC were the most complete teams on both sides of the ball. And then for Tampa to be able to put it together when at one point at 7-5 it did not look good. They had really only Green Bay was the good team that they had beaten. And they got on a roll at the end of the year, and then they played three real good teams in the postseason, great quarterbacks, Hall of Fame quarterbacks, and were really dominant. So it was a fun year for us, for Fox, for me, to follow Tampa from week one all the way through to the end of the season and watch them win it all.
So, I mean, if you could bottle something, though, and say that, to a kid coming out of college, here, drink this because this is what Tom Brady has, right? Like if you could somehow, some way boil that conversation, boil that point that you just made about he knows how to handle everything in the moment perfectly for his teammates. And obviously he's not infallible. We have seen him beaten in regular and postseasons before, but it just seems that I know about the fire that burns within and the competitor that it does require to have a bust in the same room that you have one in Canton, Troy. But can you break it down for me in any of the XO's conversations you've had with Tom, or just watching the film that you saw last night? Something that can actually come up with a way to show Brady's greatness in the moment.
Well, I think a great example of it, Rich, is in the NFC Championship game that we had against the Packers. Mm-hmm. They had a 5-point lead. They're right on the verge. They're right within field goal range. I mean, they couldn't afford to take a sack. And I commented on it before the snap of the ball that Brady cannot take a sack. He knows that better than anybody, right? Because I just know how his mind works and how he's not going to make a mistake like that in that area, knowing how important those 3 points were. Well, the ball snapped, and immediately he has a free rusher in his face, and he doesn't try to get away from him. He doesn't try to, he just immediately throws it at the receiver's feet. And it to a lot of people, it looked odd. Like, wow, almost as though there was a penalty or a false start on the play. The ball came out that fast. And it was just a great example of him just not going to risk taking a sack and taking his team out of field goal range, knowing how important those 3 points were. And it's little things like that within the game. I've said many times that when you start a game as a quarterback, when you're playing in a 0-0 game, or if in the fourth quarter you're playing with a 7-point lead or a 10-point lead or a 5-point all those things, you play the game differently. You don't take the same risks. You understand how your defense is playing, and all of that has to, as a quarterback, all of that has to be factored in as to what you then have to do as the quarterback of the team to try to move the football or to try to come away with points or just simply not lose it. And I just feel that there's a lot of that art. I don't know how much of that is truly coached. Whereas when you're talking about guys, that are successful on a consistent basis, and since we're talking about Tom Brady, those guys, he understands it. He understands those little nuances and gives his team the best chance to win in every given situation. We saw that from Peyton Manning throughout his career. As a former player, it's something that I've always admired about Tom Brady and the way that he plays the game, and I love watching it on display. And he's just a really smart, headsy player, a guy who doesn't move particularly well, never has, but yet he's been so efficient in being able to get the most out of his ability and be I said it after he won his 5th Super Bowl, the best that's ever done it, and it's hard to imagine that anybody's ever going to be able to do it better.
10 Super Bowls he's been in, Troy. I mean, that's insane. I mean,
it's crazy.
Better than
10 in 21 years. I mean,
it's crazy. Yeah. The numbers are just absurd. And it did seem like Mahomes being off to the start that he was on, If he won last night, would have been on pace, and obviously they would have just been a quarter of the way, but or a fifth of the way, just 20% of the way towards what Brady has been able to do. So, Troy Aikman here on the Rich Eisen Show. What do you say about the Chiefs' next maneuvers here and what they learned from last night? Do you just chalk it up to just wasn't their night? Andy Reid, his team just looked way off. You can't. I mean, your dad too. Can only wonder what was going through Andy Reid's mind with his own son and what was going on with his own son and the accident that took place that affected others in a significant way, a frightening way. I mean, I don't know how you put it all together. Is that just a bad night, or do you think that this is something that Brett Veach is going to be able to put his finger on and say this won't happen again, X, Y, and Z?
Yeah, I think there's, first of all, it's hard to get to the Super Bowl. And they had a great year. I mean, they did a lot of really great things. Last night, of course, was not their best night. And I don't think one game defines a season or one game defines a team. The challenge for them, as it is for a few other teams, is can they come back and kind of, put this game behind them and then go back and do it all over again next year. It sounds like, I'm sure you feel the same way. You say, oh, yeah, they're going to be, really good again, and I would expect them to be, but there are no guarantees. And no matter how good of a season you're having, no matter how good you are talent-wise, there's always these bumps in the road during the course of the year, and how well you navigate that determines whether or not you ultimately have a successful season. So, time will tell, but I do think Kansas City is going to be knocking on the door each and every year while Patrick Mahomes is their quarterback. But I think you bring up a good point as far as the situation that Andy Reid and his son find themselves in. And it's hard to try to determine just how big of a factor that was in the game. I would have to believe that it impacted at some level. I mean, I would think that it certainly would have affected Andy Reid. It would only be natural for anyone who has children to be in that position. You can understand, and then to try to get ready for, what is the biggest game of the season. I feel bad for all parties involved, and hate that it's happened to such a really good person in Andy Reid. But my heart goes out to everybody, and hopefully that all works out. But yeah, it's hard to determine exactly what the impact of all that might have been on the Chiefs.
Troy Aikman, few minutes left here with Troy on the Rich Eisen Show. You, obviously, know what the number 88 means to Michael. I do, too. We hear about the 88 Club all the time. Hear about it all the time. The original has finally gotten the call from the Hall of Fame. I wonder what you think of what you thought of the class writ large, but obviously the fact that Drew Pearson got the call after all this time. Troy.
Yeah, I was so happy for Drew. I just know how important it was to him, how let down he has been in recent years, especially last year when he thought that he would be going in and had a party and was unable to get voted in. And as emotional as he was, I think that anyone who questioned how important it was to him, I think we all got to see, how much it meant. And so I'm really happy for him, Rich. And the other one that I'm really happy for is John Lynch.
Yes.
Having played against him and knowing, his impact on the game, and really was somewhat surprised that he hadn't gotten in the last couple of years when he's been eligible. But I thought that was very deserving as well. All of them are very, very deserving, and really happy for. I think that you think that you had a great career, and when you don't get in, I've heard a lot of these guys talk about it. You think, well, that's okay. I mean, still had a great career and would have been nice, but it's not the end of the world. But then once they do get voted in, you can see just how special it is and how much it means to all of these guys. So it was a great time. I love what David Baker is doing as far as going and knocking on these guys' doors and the way that they've let them know, especially this year with the pandemic. I just think that David Baker's doing a lot of wonderful things, and hopefully the best part of all this is the ceremony, and hopefully we get a chance to have it this year. It's going to be a lot of people going in. This thing may be a week-long ceremony to get everybody into the Hall of Fame that's been voted in. But yeah, really happy for everybody and for Drew Pearson, and for as long as he's been waiting to get in.
Yeah, we had Jimmy Johnson on last week, Troy. He said he's going to give the shortest Hall of Fame speech ever, is what he said. That's what he said. He's on record. And I said, I will take him up on that because there's an absurd number of speeches. They're going to be held. It's going to be like Speechapalooza in Canton this fall.
I
mean,
really,
this summer.
I think they've got to try. I totally get it. I mean, I do understand. You get one moment, and you got so many people you want to thank, and that's your time, and I totally get it.
Yes.
So, but with that being said, somehow we've got to be able to get that, into a respectable amount of time, because if you're the last guy that goes, I was there when Kurt Warner, your co-worker, I was there when Kurt Warner went in, and I don't think he even took the stage till like 11:30 at night.
That's correct.
And it's just not right to the guys who go towards the back end. That it's a long night, so they got to figure that out. Maybe they started earlier. I don't know, but I know that it's been done for television, for prime time, and all that's great. But somehow, when there's parties and people want to go celebrate after their inductee gets in, and those aren't starting until 1 a.m. I mean, something's got to give. So I'm hopeful that they figure that part of it out. But it is a special night for everybody, and I don't begrudge anyone who goes long, but there are a lot of ramifications of that.
No doubt, and I agree with you with what David Baker, the president of the Hall of Fame, is doing. By the way, the largest man to sneak up on anybody successfully
of
all time. I mean, you know what I'm saying?
He is the biggest man. I saw him next to John Madden one year. And then Jonathan Ogden, and Jonathan Ogden is massive.
Yes,
and both John Madden's big too. John Madden and Jonathan Ogden, they looked like 8-year-olds next to David Baker, the biggest human being I've ever seen.
I know, and he's sneaking up on everybody. No one sees him coming.
He's sneaking up on everybody. Yeah, nobody sees him coming. That's amazing.
And not even Peyton Manning. He said you got him. They got him. Hey Troy, thanks for the call. I truly appreciate it every time you call. And let's stay in touch. Great season, and I appreciate the thoughts on Super Bowl 55.
You bet. Thank you, Rich.
Right back at you. That's Troy Aikman, everyone, here on the Rich Eisen Show. Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.